Pharmaceutical company Pfizer has asked the U.S. government to grant emergency authorization for the use of its COVID-19 vaccine in children ages 5 to 11. And if the FDA agrees, shots could be given within a matter of weeks. So how long before the left begins imposing vaccine mandates for children? Well, they've already embraced them with arms wide open. Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. So we knew it was only a matter of time, right? Before they went from, oh, the vaccine is great, you can get it or not get it, to you should probably get it, to get it or you lose your job. And oh, by the way, now your kids are going to have to get it at some point too, or they might not be able to go to school. Isn't it amazing how quickly the progression, the Fauciite incrementalism has moved along here? At every stage, they pretend to care about the rights of individual choice, about freedom, liberty, all that kind of stuff, but not really. They just want you to do what you are told. Here is, for example, just last week, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, saying there's going to be a mandate for all in-person learning, vaccine mandate in California, includes for kids.
We recognize good enough never is, and that's why we recognize our responsibility to do more, and that's what we are announcing here today. A statewide requirement for in-person instruction for all of our children to add to a well-established list that currently includes 10 vaccinations and well-established rules and regulations that have been advanced by the legislature for decades to add to that list the vaccination for COVID-19. We intend to do that once the FDA has fully approved the vaccine.
Yes, but they're already announcing the policy. Note that they don't wait for the approval because the approval is considered a fait accompli. It's already just baked in, right? Do children need the COVID vaccine? Are they really at risk? Because, about 1 in 1,000 kids who get measles, for example, can die from measles, which when you play that out across a broad spectrum of people getting measles, that's actually concerning. COVID, for children under the age of 18, it's more like 1 in 500,000 to 1 million. The numbers are tiny, and yet they're going to make people get the shot. What do parents think about this? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Here's the problem that you're seeing play out before you. Back to our Fauciite incrementalism. They keep pushing further. The Fauciites, the Democrats, one and the same. And then when they get their way, they say, let's move on to the next authoritarian impulse we have. I mean, here's the White House's COVID-19 response coordinator saying, oh yeah, if we coerce you to get the shot, people will get the shot.
The president has a 6-part plan to accelerate our path out of the pandemic. A cornerstone of that plan is getting the unvaccinated vaccinated. The president did a lot across the last many months to make vaccines readily available, convenient at over 80,000 locations. States offered incentives, and the president decided a month or two ago that it was time to have vaccine requirements to get that final group of people vaccinated. And what we're seeing is that the early movers on vaccine requirements are having really strong results. Vaccine rates up 25% into 90+% of people vaccinated. So vaccine requirements work.
Yes. Do this or we'll fire you. Do this or we'll ban you from public life. There are people who are going to say, okay, fine. I guess I'm just going to have to do this, even though I really don't want to. And in the case of those who have natural immunity, I really shouldn't have to at all. And you could also argue that no one should have to, because this is a virus with a 99.7% survival rate that over 100 million Americans have already gotten. And even people who are vaccinated still sometimes get it. But forget about all that. That's all that reasonable talk. You can't have that. In fact, just when we're starting to see they're about to make your kids get the shot or else they can't go to school. They're going to do that in California. I'm sure they're going to do it in New York and other states as well. They're going to roll this out in a lot of states across the country. Here is a Dr. Leana Wen on CNN saying that they should actually institute what up to this point has been considered sort of the nuclear version, or nuclear option rather, of vaccine mandates, which is interstate travel, flights. You want to get on a plane, go from Cincinnati to Miami, got to get that shot. Here she is saying just that.
We really need every tool at our disposal at this point. We've already tried incentives, we tried outreach and education. We should continue doing that. But at this point, vaccine requirements are the way to go. Vaccine requirements in workplaces, as we've seen, have been very effective. And I also think that for domestic travel, for interstate travel, for planes, trains, interstate buses, things that are within the jurisdiction of President Biden and the federal government, I really do think that it's time to put those requirements too. First, it's going to make plane and train travel a lot safer, but also, especially with holidays coming, it will be a powerful incentive for people to say, look, you can stay unvaccinated if you want, but you're not going to be able to travel to see your family.
Notice the way she says that. Not going to be able to travel, see your family. Oh, yeah. That's really what they think of you. Oh, this may be your last Christmas where you can see your grandkids, or the last Christmas where you can see your grandparents. Too bad, didn't get the shot, not allowed to go see them anymore. Think of the emotional and psychological torment these little statist authoritarians are willing to put people through because they say you have to get the shot. Notice that it was only 6 months ago when they all agreed, oh no, we're not going to make everybody get the shot. Cases are dropping dramatically across the country right now. That's actually been the case for a few weeks now. Now, there are some hot spots still, but overall, cases nationally are going down a lot. Why push more now? Shouldn't we be feeling safer and safer all the time? And who is actually going to be enforcing all these rules, and against whom? That might be an even better question because, for example, the Biden administration, while they're making life as miserable as possible for anybody who opposes the vaccine mandates and doesn't want to get the shot, Biden's team is already has released thousands and thousands of people who are in the country illegally, many of whom have COVID, into the general population. Here's what Ted Cruz pointed out.
Most of these migrants are not being medically checked for COVID. Are you concerned about a spike in diseases that have been eradicated in the past?
Well, I think Senator Marshall addressed that at considerable length, and I'll let him elaborate on it momentarily, but it is a very real problem. When I was down in the Rio Grande Valley a couple of weeks ago, the Biden cages that have on a typical day about 4,000 people crammed in on top of each other, the rate of COVID positivity when I was last there was about 24%. And the Biden administration is releasing illegal immigrants who are COVID positive into every community across the country. They're releasing them into South Texas. Just McAllen alone, this year the Biden administration has released over 7,000 illegal immigrants into McAllen, Texas, who were COVID positive.
Just note that under Title 42 authority under the CDC, they could tell anyone who comes to the country illegally for purely health reasons, if they test positive for COVID, that they are not allowed to stay in the country. But they're not doing that. They've chosen not to use that authority. Isn't that so interesting? And then, of course, there's Florida's masking policy. Just want to give you an update on this one. Mask mandates at schools, no statistical impact. This is from the governor's office. New COVID-19 cases for children aged 5 to 17, the vast majority of the school-age population, have decreased 79% in the month of September, while schools are opening, right, in the 54 Florida counties where school districts have no masking policy. For comparison, COVID-19 cases for children 5 to 17 in the 13 districts that imposed forced masking in schools have decreased 77%. So the schools without forced masking actually, on average, have a bigger drop in COVID cases than the schools with the forced masking. But that's how well masks work, everybody. Don't ask any questions. Be quiet, peasant. Do what Fauci says. I say no. All right, we have more on this with the host of Counterculture on the Epoch Times, Danielle D'Souza Gill, when we come back. But I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. Crypto market is heating up, right? Everybody wants to get in on the action, but they got to figure out how. Where do you start? That's where My Digital Money comes in, right? Whether you're going to invest in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the digital tokens that are out there, there's a lot of them. You got to know how to get started. My Digital Money is an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. They have trigger orders, they've got incredible security for your coins, and great customer service. So the crypto market's heating up. This might be the best time in a long time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. And we'll be right back with more. Hold the line. The Food and Drug Administration has reportedly scheduled a meeting later this month to consider Pfizer's request to authorize emergency use of its coronavirus vaccine. In a tweet this morning, the pharmaceutical company wrote, "With new cases in children in the U.S. continuing to be at a high level, this submission is an important step in our ongoing effort against COVID-19. If emergency use authorization is given, the move will make 28 million children eligible to receive the jab." Not surprisingly, some parents remain hesitant. Here to give her perspective is the host of Counterculture with Danielle D'Souza Gill on the Epoch Times. Danielle D'Souza Gill, good to see you, Danielle.
Good to see you, Buck. Thank you.
I have to say, it's remarkable to see how much they are acting like there's really a rigorous review process that is not already effectively decided from the perspective of policy, right? We saw that the booster shot was said to not be something that everybody needs, only a small group of Americans, according to this FDA panel. And the Biden administration decided, whatever, we're going to give it to everybody that wants to get it, at least as of now. Feels like with children and the FDA approval, it's already baked into the cake.
Exactly. And the sad thing is, really using children as guinea pigs and using them as political pawns, using them as really a scare tactic. I mean, a lot of these kids, they don't actually know. They don't follow the FDA and the science and all of this. So if they have a crazy parent or their school is forcing them to get the vaccine at this point, then they're going to be getting the vaccine. And as you said with the booster shots, the science doesn't even show that that is helpful. And the FDA has said that, okay, maybe only this select group should have them. And so this really isn't about the science anymore. It's about politics. And the sad thing is kids are really coming in the middle of it.
It's remarkable as well to see how we are being told that children are effectively, should get the shot, even though the data shows that children are at a remarkably low risk, thankfully, from COVID-19. But they've already put in place in California, Danielle, a mandate for school-age children starting next fall, as if they're preparing us for the forever pandemic and the mandatory shots for kids that are going to go along with it.
Right, of course. And they call this the new normal. But the reality is, what if you've had COVID? What if you have had antibodies, things like that? Why would you want to get the vaccine on top of that? I mean, regardless, we don't actually know what is better. And there's a lot of debate about even that. But to force kids to say they can't even go to school if they don't get this vaccine. And we know that remote learning has been so difficult for them. It's been really hard on kids to be at home, to be alone. A lot of them aren't getting the same opportunities because of that. So they're basically being forced to get the vaccine if they want to be in person and want to do something so fundamental as attend a primary school.
Also, you have parents who are speaking out against masks, speaking out against critical race theory, being essentially threatened by the Department of Justice recently, as I've been calling them, their soccer mom insurrectionists. I have to say, Danielle, if they start trying to, first of the FDA approval, and then if they try to roll out vaccine mandates for kids 5 to 12, I can only imagine that there are going to be a lot of angry, quote, insurrectionist soccer moms running around saying, I don't want you making my kid get the shot to go to school. 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds.
Well, concerned parents, they are the most dangerous people in America. They do pose the biggest threat to the left's agenda because the left knows that parents, everyday Americans, they care about their kids. If there's one thing that they're going to fight for, it's their children. And so the fact that they are really saying that we are going to demonize you as parents, we are going to be against anyone who wants to go to a school board, who wants to actually speak up for their rights. We're going to demonize you, an everyday American, an everyday mom, as you said. I mean, nothing is going to fire them up more than that. And so I think it just shows how deranged, Garland is and the Biden administration. And they obviously don't want any kind of unity.
I want to switch gears with you for a minute, Danielle. This week, ESPN suspended host Sage Steele from the air after comments she made about the company's vaccine mandate. She called it, quote, sick and scary. It's worth noting she also said she found it, quote, fascinating that former President Barack Obama self-identifies as black and does not. Well, anyway, what do you make of ESPN's decisions here?
I think it's horrible. Oh, my goodness. The fact that she was simply stating her opinion on a podcast about that, she's against a vaccine mandate. She didn't say the vaccine, but a mandate. And then also said that, hey, Obama, you're always saying you're black, but actually you're half black, half white. Your dad wasn't involved in your life. Your white mother raised you. Okay, look, this is actually someone who is a half black woman talking about this. I don't see why she shouldn't be allowed to say something. Not only that's her opinion, but it's literally fact. Obama was raised by his white mother. But aside from that, I think this just shows our cancel culture has gotten just out of control, where even someone cannot say a literal fact in addition to an opinion that many people hold regarding the vaccine. So I think that it's crazy that she was suspended for this.
I don't know if you've seen, but in recent days, CNN analyst, medical analyst, former Planned Parenthood head, so we know what she's all about, Dr. Wen has said that she believes there should be twice a week testing for all Americans for COVID going forward, that should be an administration priority. She's also said that there should be mandatory vaccine passports for all domestic airline travel and interstate travel. I'm not sure how exactly she plans to enforce that one. But do you think that there are lines that even Democrats know they can't cross with this, or are they going to try to cross them and then see what the political backlash is like?
You know, the funny thing with Leana Wen, her history with Planned Parenthood is that she was president of Planned Parenthood. They thought she was going to be great, but she actually wasn't leftist enough for them. Basically, Planned Parenthood started going down the road of saying, no, when men can have babies too, they can have periods too. We're all about the trans movement. And she was very focused on kind of the medical side of being pro-abortion. And so I always find it funny when I see her come up really pushing these medical things on people, basically forcing them, as you said. I think she said in the past, she wants to basically make it difficult for people to live in America without the vaccine. So I think seeing this debate amongst the left, amongst the radical left, about how much can we beat Americans into submission, just shows the fact that people like Leana Wen, they're the ones forcing the rest of Americans to lose their jobs, not be able to go to school, make it difficult for them to live.
I mean, it's remarkable to see that the so-called party of science believes that men can get pregnant, and they'll defend that statement. They'll say that men can get pregnant.
They will. And they won't suspend anyone for saying that.
Oh, of course. But you're Sage Steele. You better not speak out against the vaccine mandate at your company. Danielle, always illuminating. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Parent activists are beginning to push back against the Biden administration's targeting of critics of critical race theory. Got more on that with the American Conservative Union's Matt Schlapp when we come back. But I want to talk to you about protecting yourself from online criminals. Did you know the Social Security Administration's computer servers are 45 years old? Or that the computer servers at Health and Human Services are 50 years old? I mean, maybe that's how cyber criminals got into the Census Bureau's computers, where they have so much information stored on you. Look, there's massive risk to a lot of things online, but the biggest by far is ownership of your home. It's called home title theft. The FBI says it's one of the fastest growing crimes out there. Cyber criminals hack into vulnerable systems and they then forge your signature stating you sold your home on the actual deed, right? Then he'll borrow against your home and leave you in debt. You won't know until collection notices show up. Protect your most valuable asset. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim of this crime and don't know it yet. Use promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO, HomeTitleLock.com. We'll be right back. Outrage is growing over the Biden DOJ's crackdown on parents and school board protests. Activists gathered in Virginia to push back on what they're calling dangerous government overreach and a threat to free speech, and they're not wrong. Here to react to all this, Chairman of American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Mr. Schlapp, always good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Buck.
So walk us through this one. Since when did caring about your children's education and hoping that they weren't being exposed to quasi-pornographic material, being exposed to critical race theory, being masked, or I don't know, maybe double masked just to be safe in school, since when did that make you a possible domestic terrorist?
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. And here where I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Democratic nominee for governor, Terry McAuliffe, said in a debate that parents don't have the right to see what books their kids are reading. You know, this is what socialists believe. They believe that the state knows better. Educrats are more educated than parents, and they know better. And The teachers union had signaled to Tony Fauci and the CDC what they wanted them to do on opening or closing schools. And what we have in this case is this other union that comprises membership from school boards, basically signaled to DOJ and to the Biden administration that they needed to do something to stop these parents from being so aggressive at these school board meetings, which are public meetings made for parents to come and express their views. And so the DOJ did what the unions wanted them to do. It's the second time this has happened in the Biden administration. Sometimes I don't know where I'm living anymore.
I mean, here's Jen Psaki when she was pressed on this by Steve Doocy, who seems to be one of the only people that will press her on any question of public importance. But here's how that went.
Does the administration agree that parents upset about their kids' curriculums could be considered domestic terrorists?
These were threats against public servants, threats against members of the school board. Regardless of the reasoning, threats and violence against public servants is illegal.
I mean, I get threats. Like, is the DOJ going to track down every person that says mean, scary things to me? I don't think so.
No, definitely not. And here's the thing. It's all this, what do words mean? Remember this whole idea of my truth and how the definition of words seems to change under this kind of woke culture of we'll steal a word and bastardize its meaning. Now you have this idea when a conservative parent, by the way, a lot of these parents aren't even conservatives. Let me just say, when a parent who believes that America is a decent place and believes in societal norms like cops are needed and the military is needed and it's okay to go to church, when they all of a sudden get alarmed at what they're hearing while their kids are kept home from school because of corona regulations, and they start to hear what's going on with these teachers, they all of a sudden got engaged and saying, wait, what is this CRT? Why are they teaching my kids that they have white privilege and somehow they're somehow caught up in slavery when that was centuries ago? And so you go through all this, and parents have been activated because of the extremism of the left. So what does the Biden administration do? They slur parents with this word. It's the same slur, Buck, that they used at anybody who supported Trump, anybody who took to the streets to counter Black Lives Matter. By the way, when the left burns down buildings, shoots cops, creates complete civil unrest all over the country, you know what that is? That's an understandable expression of their political concerns, and it's called a protest. When I was involved in the Brooks Brothers riot in the 2000 election in Miami, they called us a riot. We were guys in preppy clothes saying that we should be able to observe the ballots, no violence at all. That's a riot. When the left riots, it's a protest.
At least you were impeccably dressed while you were fighting for the Republic, yeah. Mr. Schlapp, which we always appreciate. But, you know, it's amazing to see how the Democrats won't really, you know, if someone asks me, do you think that parents who want to speak out at school board meetings, regardless, as you point out, of their politics, are domestic terrorists? I mean, I laugh at that. I've been saying this is like the soccer mom insurrectionist talk, where they just, the same way they pretend that anybody who ever voted for Donald Trump was part of the January 6th insurrection, now they're just trying to pull more people in as threats to democracy all the time. This is the phrase that idiots constantly use. It's a threat to our democracy. Here's Senator Ted Cruz of Texas asking Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark what she thinks about this situation. I think it's illuminating.
Is it beneficial for the Attorney General to label them as domestic terrorists and direct the FBI to target them?
The Attorney General's memo deals with threats against public servants and says that threats against public servants are not only illegal, they run counter to our nation's core values.
Do you believe parents objecting at school boards are domestic terrorists?
I don't, Senator.
Okay. Glad to see that they'll at least pull the line, they'll at least draw the line on that one. They'll hold the line, if you will.
Yeah, so this is the problem, is that the left is much more centralized. So when those people targeted Ted Cruz when he was going out to dinner with his family or at the airport, when they targeted Rand Paul and the rest of us who left the White House after the Republican National Convention, you know, that's all acceptable protest. But when parents want to get engaged, you know, they're called domestic terrorists. You know what's crazy, Buck, is when these illegals who are here in this country, who are organized by the left, people like George Soros, to attack Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, they're not even supposed to be here legally. It's an insane idea. Yet what they're doing is excused by Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and the rest. We're talking about parents, taxpayers. Their kids are being polluted in the schools that they're paying for in their taxpayer money. And Joe Biden and Merrick Garland think it's appropriate to call them domestic terrorists. This is just a moment when I think the American people are going to reject this. I think the election next year is going to be the biggest thing I've ever seen.
This is what perfect transition, Max. I was going to ask you. I'm sure you've seen. I think it was Quinnipiac polling most recently, just showing. Yes. I mean, Biden's numbers are just circling the drain in a whole range of areas. The worst is actually on immigration, which makes perfect sense. But even on area, because it's the worst it's ever been right now, with the border being a total open door policy thanks to Biden. But on issues like COVID and the economy. Independents, yeah, they're Democrats who doesn't matter. Joe Biden could come out and say that, he is the lizard king. It doesn't matter. They would still vote for him. But if you have independents going against Biden in the numbers they currently have, it's going to be an absolute wipeout for them in the midterms. Can they turn this around? I always feel like I don't want Republicans or conservatives to get complacent about this stuff.
Well, Republicans can screw up anything. You got to remember that. That's like the first rule. These Biden numbers are so bad, I want to get them tattooed on my butt. The worst day that Donald Trump had in the Real Clear Politics average equates almost exactly to where Joe Biden is in this most recent poll. The difference between when Donald Trump had a bad week on polling and where Joe Biden, who's had about a bad month on polling, is Joe Biden doesn't have the physical skills to get himself out of the situation. Donald Trump had the opposite of that. He was so vigorous. He was like, he would take it to him, and sometimes it was too much, but he has a lot of clubs in the bag to try to pull out of his bad numbers. Joe Biden just has these kind of unsteady performances, with his designator hitter being Kamala Harris, who they allow to do about one thing a day, and usually it involves eating lunch. So I don't know what he does to get out of this, especially when you look at the agenda. The agenda, Buck, look at the numbers. Everything is dog meat. Nothing is popular. We haven't even moved on to big deficit spending and great increases in taxes. So I don't see how he pulls out of this. I very much view this as akin to Jimmy Carter. He just couldn't pull out of it. He got seen as a loser, and the American people rejected him. And Joe Biden is dangerously close to that, and I don't know if anyone can tell him that.
Great to see you, Matt. Thanks for sharing your expertise, my friend.
Thanks, Buck.
A new report claims the ISIS-K suicide bomber who killed 13 U.S. service members back in August was a prisoner that had been released from Bagram Air Base just weeks before that mass casualty attack. We'll discuss the details with former Deputy National Security Advisor to the Vice President Dick Cheney at the time, Stephen Yates, when we come back. Right now, I want to tell you about My Digital Money. It seems everybody wants to invest in crypto these days. Bitcoin, Ethereum, there's so many digital tokens out there. It's not easy to get started. That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. Your comfort and security is their absolute top priority. They've got incredible security for your coins. You can set up trigger orders so you can actually secure gains without having to watch it all day. And you got a play money account so you can see how you do without risking actual cash. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. Steve Yates up next. Stay with us. The ISIS-K suicide bomber who killed 13 U.S. service members outside Kabul International Airport was reportedly a prisoner who was released from Bagram Air Base after the Taliban seized control of the facility just weeks before that attack. From Business Insider, the bomber who killed so many people at Hamid Karzai International Airport on August 26 was released from Parwan prison at Bagram Air Base when the Taliban took over the facility on August 15th, the same day insurgent forces entered the capital city. Thousands of prisoners were freed when Afghan forces faced off with a sweeping Taliban offensive. So why didn't the Biden administration move those prisoners in the first place, and who's going to take responsibility for this kind of a miscalculation? Steve Yates of DC International Advisor, he's CEO, joins me to assess Biden's failed handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal. Steve, good to see you.
Thank you, Buck.
It does seem like if you're going to hand over Bagram Air Base, perhaps wait to empty out the prison and therefore wait to put yourself in this kind of a position until you've at least evacuated U.S. civilians. I don't know. This feels like yet another moment where you have to wonder who was really in charge for this White House.
No, it's really, really stunning. It's hard to believe this story could get any worse. It was very obviously misordered priorities strategically and operationally, just with the withdrawal and trying to get civilians out. There's absolutely no reason to have given up Bagram and relied upon the civilian airport in Kabul. But the idea that the prisons would be released with these kinds of people, and then they're directly involved in this terrible, terrible attack right at the end, just unforgivable, really. But we live in an era where there is no accountability taken at the top of the ranks, whether it's in intelligence or military right now.
Speaking of accountability, or the lack thereof, Press Secretary Psaki was asked about this release of a terrorist, and of course we know this terrorist went on to kill 13 American soldiers in Kabul based on the reporting we've seen. Here is the press secretary responding.
I can't speak to the specific case. I'd leave it to the intelligence community to speak to that. So I'd point you to them. I'd remind you that as it relates to Bagram, there was a decision made to close Bagram because it wasn't strategically in the interests of the United States and our national security to keep it open with 5,000 troops there protecting Bagram at a distance that was far away from the capital and far away from where people from the embassy would be evacuated.
What do you make of that, Stephen?
Boy, that sounds like some very, very contorted talking point manufacturing. There's just no conceivable way, after 20 years of using Bagram very strategically to keep people safe in that area, but also in the capital. In fact, when high-value Americans went to Afghanistan during the wartime, they would often land in Bagram and they would helo into Kabul from there. So, I mean, it's just unfathomable that anyone from the White House would say such complete and utter nonsense. And forgive me, they seem to find a way to talk about the cases and the criminals they want to. Then they want to punt on a talking point that doesn't quite work. But really, right after this attack happened, they wanted to quickly say, well, these were ISIS-K people that the Trump administration had let out as part of their dealings. And now, just after just a few weeks of scrubbing, we know it's not only not true, the opposite is true. This administration let this guy out and he killed those Marines.
Stephen, I know you have national security expertise that spans a whole range of topics, but you are also a Mandarin speaker and somebody who knows the situation in East Asia, specifically with China, quite well. I wanted to switch gears to that now. Taiwan's defense minister said that military tensions with China are at their worst in more than 40 years. This just after a record number of Chinese military planes entered Taiwan's air defense zones. How concerning is this? I mean, how much of an escalation is this compared to the usual provocations and rhetoric from the Chinese Communist Party? I mean, should we be worried there could actually be an invasion of Taiwan at some point in the near future?
I think we have to be worried and they have to be worried because we can't afford not to take rogue actors at face value in what they say. At some point, they may do exactly what they've been telling us that they might do. There is a long, long history of them pushing the envelope with planes, with ships, and all kinds of pressure tactics to try to make Taiwan feel isolated and alone, indefensible, all of that. So there's always going to be theater, but under Xi Jinping, there's been a very muscular expansion of authoritarianism. We saw it in Hong Kong. We see it with their wolf warrior diplomacy and the way they even treat our secretaries of state and our national security advisor. So I think we have to take this very, very seriously. But the message from Joseph Wu, who's a longtime friend, a smart guy, happens to be their foreign minister, I think is appropriate because a lot of people doubt whether the Taiwan people are willing to fight. He's making clear they don't see conflict. They didn't do anything to provoke this by Beijing, but they want to make clear that they want friends to help them help themselves. They need the focus. They need the support.
How certain are you, Stephen, in your analysis that if China decided to go for it, that Taiwan would actually fight and do, because there are some who say maybe Taiwan would just decide, okay, fine, this is inevitable.
Well, I have 100% certainty that the people of Taiwan would resist. Whether that resistance is sufficient, especially if they're left alone, completely abandoned, sort of like the people of Afghanistan, then the deck is stacked against them. But if Japan, if the United States, if others will step forward, despite our leaders, then they have a real chance and they'll commit to resist. They survived Japanese colonialism for 50 years. They survived martial law under the Nationalist Party to emerge as a democracy. They can and will endure, but they need support and they need others to help deter so that Beijing doesn't think they have a go option.
Why is Beijing so aggressive in its rhetoric right now? Why is the Chinese Communist Party putting out stuff that makes people who are even kind of passive readers of the news who aren't really focused in on China say, whoa, this is heating up?
Yeah, it really is up several notches. They used to sort of bide their time and hide their teeth. But now they say the quiet part out loud often. And I think there's two things going on. Number one, weakness is provocative, and they sense that there's weakness out of the United States and in sort of the air quotes international community. But there's also a lot of problem inside of China, financially, politically, infrastructure, you go down the list. They have a mega corporation called Evergrande, very ironically named, that is possibly the largest indebted institution outside of any government in the world. And it's teetering on not being able to meet its obligations. That'll have implications way beyond China, but it has massive implications inside China. It looks very bad for leader Xi Jinping. And when communist leaders feel on the ropes, a lot of times they create conflict on the outside to get a rally around the flag and distract away from problems at home.
How do you think the Biden administration is going to handle China going forward?
Sadly, I wish I had any confidence whatsoever, but after we watched what's happened in Afghanistan, we watched the president not really even be able to give a coherent message. He's talking about maybe possibly having a video conference with the leader of China, not exactly the demonstration of strength or deterrence that's necessary. I'd like to believe that the Taiwan Relations Act and the Congress and the sort of institutional memory in government would do the right thing, but I have grave doubts about that given the polarized and sort of incompetent era we seem to live in.
Stephen Yates, always insightful, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you, Buck.
NBA players are threatened with up to 6 months in jail if they break quarantine protocols in Canada. We'll bring you the latest COVID lunacy after the break. But first, big tech is taking advantage of us. They're mining our data, remining our data, selling it, and guess what? You don't benefit from it, right? Look, if you really think your emails, texts, and messages are private and safe, I got news for you. They're not. This is where Secure comes in. Secure's email platform is 100% private. It's hosted in Switzerland, the country with the best privacy laws in the world, no ties to American tech companies. With Secure, there's no data mining whatsoever. It's completely private. This is what makes Secure different from every other email and messaging service that's out there right now. Look, there's a reason Secure built their company the way they did. We need to make a stand and take back our privacy from the big tech monopolies. And if you already use what you think is a private email platform, you may want to look into them, who hosts them, where they're located. They're not as private and secure as you think. That's why you need Secure. Use my discount code BUCK and Secure, S-E-K-U-R, will only cost you $7.50 a month for full access. That's nothing. Go to secure.com today and create your secure email address and account. Use promo code BUCK for 25% off for a whole year. That's secure.com, S-E-K-U-R.com, promo code BUCK. We'll be right back with tonight's Quick Hits. Jen Psaki makes a startling admission about gas prices, and Bernie Sanders seems to miscalculate the basic math of democracy. It is time for Quick Hits. Let's get to it. Bernie Sanders, socialist. At least he's open about it, honest about it. But of course, the American Democratic Party has moved closer and closer to socialism every year for, well, as long as I guess I've been alive, or at least for the last 20 years or so they've been doing it. That much is pretty clear. And what is the beef that Bernie Sanders has with the process right now? Well, there are rules, you see. There's a whole majority vote thing that you have. And if you can't get to at least the 50-50 threshold with a tie break by the vice president, you can't pass what you want in the Senate. This is really the heart, the core of the system. But Sanders wants to tell two Democrats who don't want to go along with the crazy socialist spending extravaganza that they don't have the right to stop the other 48. You got to hear this.
So my concern with Mr. Manchin is not so much what his views are. I disagree with him. But it is that it is wrong. It is really not playing fair that one or two people think that they should be able to stop what 48 members of the Democratic caucus want, what the American people want, what the President of the United States wants. That would be my position. So Senator Manchin has a right to fight for his point of view. He has not only a right to be heard, he has a right to get some compromises. He's a member of the Senate. But two people do not have the right to sabotage what 48 want and what the President of the United States wants. That, to me, is wrong.
No, but see, he doesn't understand. It's that 48 people don't have the right to do what 52 in the Senate don't want them to do. Bernie doesn't really have much of a conception here how this whole vote thing works, it seems. For a guy who is a sitting senator, you'd think he would have thought this through a little bit more. But then again, he's a socialist, so how much could he have thought through anything? Jen Psaki, always providing a lot of good stuff for the show here. Psaki Bomb. She is recognizing that one thing that people do not like, no matter who the president is, no matter what the political climate is, they don't like high gas prices. And Jen Psaki is out there telling everybody, we need to keep gas prices low, which they're not. They're high right now. They got to do something about it. But they also need to address the threat of climate change right away. So let's make sense of this one.
Certainly hope not. I mean, I think what COP26 is about is to continue the conversation on the international stage at the leader level. That has been going on below the leader level continuously, basically, about our need to work together to address the climate crisis. One of the greatest national security crises the president sees. A number of other world leaders agree on that front. Certainly, we all want to keep gasoline prices low, but the threat of the crisis, the climate crisis, certainly can't wait any longer.
It can't wait any longer. They keep saying this every year. If we don't address it right now, it'll be too late. And to that, I just want to say, can we agree when it will be too late and that we haven't addressed it then so we can stop hearing about it because this is absurd? Right? Can we just say if we haven't addressed the climate crisis in 2 years that we give up and we just live our lives? We have to hear about this crap anymore. That would be nice. No, somehow that won't happen. If it doesn't get addressed this year, it's too late, they will say, every year for the next 20 years. And people like me who point it out are the problem. It's too late. Except it'll be too late next year and the year after that. Okay, sure. Meanwhile, the NBA actually has a bit of vaccine hesitancy that is catching on in a big way from some big names. But that means the NBA is now informing people that they are going to come under some pretty draconian rules, too. NBA players have been told unvaccinated players who breach quarantine in Toronto will face criminal offense. Unvaccinated players are only able to leave their hotel for team activities per Canada's Quarantine Act. Violations could lead up to 6 months in prison and or a $750,000 fine. Gee, that seems pretty outrageous and totalitarian, doesn't it? That seems like quite a bit to me. But here we are. Thanks for being here, team. Always a pleasure. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Fields High.